Okay, welcome everyone for the University of Kentucky's Office of Technology Commercialization's February webinar, Ask Matt. This is an opportunity to get intellectual property questions answered. If you've attended previous webinars, you know they're typically for us presentations. We decided to try a different format to see how it works. So we hope everyone learns a lot. Please feel free to put questions directly to me, Jackie Green, in the chat, and I'll be happy to ask those to Matt as well. A little housekeeping, we are recording and live transcription is available, and you can adjust that by clicking the button below if you want to turn it off or turn it on. Okay, we're going to get started. Matt, welcome. I'd like to have you take a few minutes to tell everybody a little bit about your background, especially people who may have not have met you since a few months after you came to work at UK. We had a pandemic and we went remote. So tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to the University of Kentucky.
So science background, I'm a chemist, and decided to go to law school because of a symposium my senior year in undergrad. I didn't know what to do with my chemistry degree, and a patent attorney came in and I said, that sounds awesome. Went to law school, graduated. Before working as a patent attorney, wanted to make sure it's what I wanted to do. So I just did general law, a little bit of everything. So criminal, domestic, divorces, things like that. And then said, yes, patent attorney is definitely what I want to do. And went to work for a boutique firm. So I worked there for about 7-8 years, and then left that firm to become partner at another firm, heading up their IP department. Worked there for 4 years. In the meantime, had a family, and then realized I wanted to spend more time with my family. So at that point, I decided to go in-house, meaning stop private practice and go to work for a company. So I went to work for Bacher Chemi, that is a big silicone manufacturer. They're not a big multinational company, but fairly good size, about 5 billion revenue a year, and was their chief patent counsel for North America. Worked there, and then realized I still wasn't doing a good job of seeing my family. So saw a posting at the University of Kentucky and interviewed with Ian and the team here and said, this is what I want to do. So I have been here ever since then.
Wonderful, Matt. Can you talk about what coming into this new environment, what you learned that you think anyone should know just about intellectual property in the university system?
I had a little bit of experience coming in even before I got here, because when I was in private practice, I was outside counsel for Ohio State University. So not all of their patents, but a lot of their patents that came out of their chemistry department, I would draft. And the main difference between, I guess, private industry and patent work and academia and patent work is, in industry, there's no expectation of publications or things like that. Versus when you come into an academic setting in an institution, publication is expected, right? It's part of what gets evaluated for tenure. It's just what researchers are expected to do. And unfortunately, that puts the idea of getting IP and this idea of publication kind of at odds, because you've come up with this great discovery, you want to get it out, you want to publish on it. In the patent world, everything needs to be secret until you file a patent. So kind of that at odds. So, overcoming that is get to our office as early as you can, and we can help ensure that that IP is protected while allowing you to go ahead and publish and maintain that kind of publishing schedule that you're accustomed to.
So speaking about publications, say I've already started a publication or something has published, but I haven't gone through the process to get my invention through OTC protected. What should I do?
Contact us as soon as you can. If you haven't, if you're working on a manuscript, that manuscript can be used as a good basis for that patent filing. So, that's a good time. If you've already published, although it may preclude protection in a number of countries, in the United States, we have a 12-month grace period that from first public disclosure to filing can be 12 months. So you can still get it in, but we just need to know. So you would need to get with our office and whatever stage it's in, we can work with you to see how best we can protect that.
Wonderful. So I think maybe one of the most essential questions, especially if you're new to protection for your inventions, is why, as an inventor, do I need to seek out protection?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different reasons, right? So, I come from the world of private practice. So first and foremost is when you seek protection, it gives you the right to exclude others, right? So if there's a desire to ever license this out or start up a company around it, you need that ability to prevent others from doing the same thing you're doing, right? It's your intellectual property. It is, something you have developed that no one else has ever done. And the only way to leverage that is to exclude others from doing. Not the only way, but one of the best ways. In addition, we all, in looking at it from other ways is, as researchers, you're developing and working in science, trying to come up with breakthroughs to either, help a patient population, to make something easier, do something more efficient. And I think the end goal of most of those individuals is to see that work get out and actually benefit the public. And one of the best ways to do that is to, take that invention, protect it, and then team up with, industry outside or do a startup, whatever it may be. But the university itself isn't in the business of selling products or making products, right? We're in the business of science and discovery and teaching. So to get other parties interested outside of the university setting, they're looking for a return on investment. And one of the ways we can do that is give them exclusivity, right? Not only exclusivity to our invention, but that assurance that someone else isn't going to come along and do the same thing. So if you want to see what you're working on get out and actually benefit the public, IP protection is one of the best ways to go about it.
Thanks, Matt. Could you talk about the process? An innovator has an ideal. What is the process? Where should they start? And walk through the entire process of how we handle all that as IP?
Yeah, so I mean, at least, the strategy I like to look at is I would like our office to be involved as early as possible. Right? So if you have an idea for a research project or direction you want to go, you can reach out to our office and we can sit down and do a patent landscape search or look at some references that you have and compare the direction you want to go and find that white space to see, where is there room for innovation in this field? A good example, we had a call this morning, meeting with the innovator that was looking to make analogs of a certain chemical compound. And we knew there were some patents out there. So we sat down with the innovators, looked at those patents and determined, if we're going to make analogs of this, where's the white space? What do these patents not cover that may give us grounds and an avenue, not only to be effective, right, in the actual goal of making this compound, but what do we think we can get protection on as well? So we can provide that as an early stage. And then as research goes along, or you find something that works that takes you down a different path, we can reevaluate it all through that. And then when we finally have a working embodiment, that's when the invention disclosure can come in. It doesn't mean that you have to have a prototype or have everything figured out. It's just, in the example I gave, whenever they do get those analogs and the testing looks promising, come back to a submitted invention disclosure. And then we do a more in-depth patent search based on those specific, inventions or innovations, whatever it may be. And go through and also do a market analysis to see who would be potential partners, right? What is the best avenue to take this outside the university, right? And I think a lot of times, we throw around words like commercialization and things like that, and everyone thinks it's all about making money. But at the end of the day, it's trying to find the best path to get your idea from the university setting into the people you want to help, right? Into the hands of those individuals. And oftentimes that does involve commercialization, but not from UK's sense, right? We have to find some partner willing to disseminate that knowledge or idea or innovation out to the public at large. So, I mean, that's just, how, and then we work with you all through the process, right? It's not like we file a patent application and you never hear from us. We're constantly trying to, during this process, we've now started to have meetings when we have these communications with the patent office where they say, we like your invention, but we think there's this other prior art out there. And sitting down and having meetings and making sure that we are tailoring our responses, not only one to give us an allowance, but to give us a patent that someone would be interested in taking a license on, because it is directed towards the market we're trying to hit. And hopefully making it as attractive as possible to a partner, again, so that we team up with someone that has the ability to get your device, your innovation, your compound, your intervention, curriculum, whatever it may be, out into the hands of the people that can actually use it.
Thank you, Matt. What aspects of patent protection do researchers in the university setting who are new to IP commercialization find to be the most surprising, in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, that's a lot of things, right? The fact that you can claim something that doesn't work, right? The fact that there's two different worlds of prior art. And when I say prior art, so when a patent office is looking at your invention, they can use against your invention anything that's ever been published, ever, right? As long as it's become public and out there and has been written down, they can use it against you. And you kind of have these two main branches, right? Academia is worried about, has anyone ever published in a scientific journal the science I'm about ready to do? The patent office isn't so much concerned about that. What mainly the rejections you'll receive is based on individuals' patents or companies' patents that are out there. And it's kind of two different things, right? If go back to the example about the chemical compound and the analog, just as the easy patent frame of reference. This patent that our researchers had found covered it was claiming, trying to exclude others from a single species. But the patent itself, I actually have a copy of it. Oh, you can't even see. Oh, it's 155 pages of different chemical species. And the main question is, well, they didn't make all those. How can they be used against me? Well, unfortunately, they did that to exclude others defensively, right? So they mentioned that we can do everything under the sun based off of this backbone. And I think that's the hardest thing, is just because someone hasn't made it, someone doesn't specifically try to exclude others from doing it. If it's written down, it can be used against you. And it's understanding how to navigate through that prior art to arrive at something that is novel, not just in the eyes of scientific community, but novel in the eyes of the patent office.
150 pages. That's a lot of information. That, I mean, that is definitely a way to keep people from doing something with any of those chemical compounds. So can you talk about the Intellectual Property Committee and what their role is in patent protection?
Yeah, so, OTC can help commercialize these things, but at the end of the day, the first determination that needs to be made is whether or not UK has an ownership interest, right? Because UK isn't in the business of trying to steal ideas that did not come out of the university setting or why people were employed here. So everyone that's employed at UK, in our administrative regulations essentially says, if you think of something in or develop something in your duties for UK, it belongs to UK. And that is kind of the role of the IPC, or the Intellectual Property Committee. So they meet on a monthly basis, and we take all the inventions we get in and present in that 1 month time frame, essentially, and present them to the IPC. And essentially, they're looking at a 2 threshold question, right? 1, is it a UK employee? And 2, were UK resources expended in the development of that invention? And, kind of UK resources is kind of broad in the sense that, was it federally funded? Did money come through from a source that funneled through OSPA or some other grant mechanism? And if the answer to that is yes, then the IPC makes a determination that that UK owns that intellectual property. Now, that's not a bad thing, right? Because that means that UK is then responsible for moving that IP protection forward and determining what avenues are best to protect that. So essentially, it means UK will foot the bill to start that process. Meaning you don't have to go out and spend $30,000 to $40,000 of your own money to try to patent something. We will do that if the invention warrants that type of protection. It could be a copyright, it could be other forms of intellectual property. But our department, OTC, will take a look at that, start the IP protection, and then you're able to avail yourself of the resources that we have, right? We have commercialization specialists, we have contract individuals. We have programs that help you if you want to start up a company. We'll train you how to do that, right? So you're able to avail yourself of all of those programs once the IPC makes that determination.
Matt, we had a question that was submitted earlier. This seems like a good time to talk about it because it's about federally sponsored projects. And the question is, what resources or procedures are available to work with UK OTC when declaring new technology if required under a federally sponsored project?
So it's a good question. Part of our office is whenever there is a federally sponsored program and you do develop something and you submit it to our office, what that also does is we take on the responsibility of maintaining compliance for that invention, right? Most, NIH funded projects require that if there is a disclosure, we have to inform the federal government. And then if we file a patent application off of that, certain language has to be included in that patent. We also have to update the federal government through a specific system called iEdison as to the status of that intellectual property. We have to prove that the language is in there. We have to let them know that we filed. And in addition, we have to let them know if any money comes in from a license based off of that. So anytime a federally funded project enters our office, like I said, we take on the responsibility of maintaining that compliance side of it. So, if it was something we released out to an individual, they would then become responsible for it. But since UK owns it, we take it upon ourselves to make sure we're monitoring that and following all the guidelines with federal funding.
Great, thank you. After submitting an innovation disclosure, what are some of the best things that an innovator can do to help maximize the chance that their invention will successfully make it to the marketplace to benefit the public?
I mean, the biggest thing overall is stay engaged in the process, right? And by engagement, I mean engage in both the IP side and the commercialization side, right? Because a lot of, I talked earlier on that academia presents its own problems with people wanting to publish, and the IP world, which is more about keeping things secret until you file. So what that means is a lot of our inventions are early stage, right? For inventions that come out of pharma, they may have a lead compound we file on, but you're looking at 8 to 10 years down the road, if it works out, ever being a drug. So during that process, it's just maintaining engagement. Engagement on the IP side, meaning you're staying involved, so we can direct those claims to what we need to direct it to get interest from parties outside of UK. Staying involved on the commercialization side, because we may go present it to a potential partner and they say, well, we like it, but I wish you had data on this. Well, we're going to, OTC doesn't have the capabilities to do that testing to find out, does it do that? Does it perform in this way? Does it meet this, criteria that this company is looking for? And that's something we will come back to the innovator and say, can you do this? Do we have, and sometimes you have the resources, sometimes you don't. And then if you don't, we have mechanisms to try to help with that in some areas. And then, because if we can overcome that hurdle, it makes that technology more attractive to those companies. So the biggest thing I say would just be engagement, because then, we find out, what is your lab doing, right? Because we may have this one invention and that engagement may prompt an idea and you work on something else and you tell us about it. And then we can file maybe a new patent or something just to make it more attractive. So overall, I just say engage with our office. We're here to help, and not help in the sense of we're here to make everyone lots of money. What we're here to do is help to take UK technology invented by the great researchers we have here and do our best to get it into the hands of people that need it.
Matt, you talked about publications earlier, which we know are very important to our faculty innovators. Can a publication that someone has done from the past be used against them by the patent office?
It can. So remember I talked about in the beginning, we have a grace period. So if you publish a paper, you have 12 months in the United States in which to file, or that previous work will be used against any future filing that you have related to that issue. And that's only in the US. So other countries have what's known as the absolute novelty standard, meaning if you publish before you get something filed, any patent application you would file in Europe, for example, would be dead on arrival. They would even if it was 2 days. So if you published on a Monday but didn't file in, your first filing in Europe didn't hit till Wednesday, it's still going to be used against you. So the US is the only place that has that, kind of the grace period where we file often. So it is, very important. Just because it's yours doesn't mean it can't be used against you. So it's anything that's written prior to your filing can be used against you, except when it's your own within 12 months in the United States.
Thanks, Matt. I know that a lot of times when people think about intellectual property, they think of more like medical devices, the more of the hard sciences things, but there are other types of intellectual property. Can you talk about the different types and maybe provide some examples of what those are that span across all of the disciplines?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially what comes out from our researchers are 2 main categories, right? Patents, which is traditional medical device, a compound, a new, engineering method, something like that. And those are pretty easy to pin down, right? Then you have some that kind of straddle the line. Maybe it's a new type of software, And sometimes that is patentable, sometimes it's not. And then you have this other big category of copyright, right? And, different, but yet the same. So they both do the same thing, meaning they take an idea that you have placed into a specific embodiment, and then they protect that embodiment, right? That's what a patent does. It doesn't protect the idea of a new compound, it protects the compound. Just like a copyright doesn't protect the idea of writing a curriculum or what we've seen come out of UK of graphic novels to provide teaching to certain populations, or applications for, underserved communities or whatever that may be. Copyright is still available to provide protection. So copyrights generally, with patents, we have inventors, and those, although it can get gray sometimes, it's the people that contributed to the conception and development, reduction of practice, as we call it, of that invention. In copyright, those are the authors, right? If you have an idea for an app and you get other people involved to code, they may be, authors as well. Just like patents, everything flows back to the university. But those copyrights can be just as valuable as any patent that we have. Plus, it allows us a vehicle once we have some IP around. I'm trying to think of one instance. We have a group interested in healthcare that serves previously drug addicted mothers, right? So they make a video every day of encouragement, and those have copyrights associated with them. And the copyright and the programs that have been developed that we copyright, it may even not be to monetize it, but what we're trying to do is find a way to make those type of programs and interventions or whatever it may be self-sustaining, right? I mean, that's the goal, is to get this into as many hands as possible. So what we want to do is use IP in that case to help a innovator reach some level of sustainability with the project they're working on. And that may involve money, it may involve licensing, but what it also does is gives us some level of control, right? If UK develops some type of intervention, we want to make sure that intervention is being applied properly. Because if not, it's not, we found it's not effective. So we want some level of control, and that intellectual property by using copyright allows us to do that. There is another type of intellectual property. So, well, because you asked for examples. So patents, that's easy. Copyrights, interventions, curriculum, books, videos, anything like computer software, apps may fall under the copyright. Pictures. In our ancient, we have pictures of ancient documents that we copyright and people pay for, because we have the ability to take those images of scrolls that haven't been opened in thousands of years, or take, in-depth images with them still rolled up, and people that don't have those facilities are willing to pay for those. And it's not a money-making proposition, right? That money that comes in allows them to continue to do the work that they're doing. So that's kind of examples there. There is another type that is sometimes applicable. I mention it just because if you do a search of what is intellectual property, it will come up, but it doesn't have that much applicability in a university setting. And when I explain it, you'll know why. So that would be trade secret, which means you don't get a patent on it. You don't get a copyright. You essentially keep it secret, which kind of runs at odds with the purpose of a university, right? But businesses use it all the time. If they have determined that they have a special way of making something, and they have to heat it to this exact temperature and then let it cool for this exact amount of time to have the type of properties they desire, they may not file a patent on that, right? They may just keep it secret. I mentioned before that I came from a larger chemical company, and we had a process of running a plant that was kept as a trade secret. There were no patents on it, nothing. No one in the company knew anything about the entire process. It was split over multiple people, and each of the pieces they were responsible for were kept on a different server in a basement in Munich, Germany. And every key card swipe to get into that room where those servers were located was monitored, right? Because you actually have to take steps to keep it secret. And that's why, in a university setting, 999 times out of 1,000, it's just not going to be applicable, because our goal is to get our knowledge out.
Thanks, Matt. A lot of the news has been filled up with NFTs. Is there anyone at UK that can help with if someone has an idea for an NFT project?
So NFTs are new. So they're so new that next week I will be taking some courses on how NFTs and tech transfer offices kind of work together. So currently right now, I guess the verdict is still out with respect to NFTs. You have the older kind of guard saying that NFTs and to some extent cryptocurrencies are inflated markets that could go away at any time, right? Because the NFT technically never gives you anything. You don't own anything with the NFT other than access to something. There's no guarantee that that something will even always be there, right? What you're purchasing is access to something. So, we're trying to see how that can be used and leveraged, and we do have some individuals at UK that have been successful with NFTs. One that comes to mind and has, written about it pretty extensively is Brian Fry at UK's law school. He's a law professor there, and he has leveraged that and taken advantage personally to do some really interesting things. But the take on it from there is it live performance art and versus an actual tangible thing, right? Are you paying for access to art rather than a, if I was to buy a pen, right? Something that's tangible that I can put my hands on. So it's an interesting section, like area. The problem is that, IP law and other law, unfortunately, it's my area. I am a patent attorney, and law typically follows behind trends by quite a bit. So I don't even know if the law knows how to deal with these things yet, technically, right? Because what happens if you pay $1 million for access to a specific, you buy an NFT, you have the access to this thing that's located on some server somewhere, you've paid the money, and then they pull that thing off the server. Now you have a link, but that link goes nowhere, right? How does the law even characterize that? Has there been a theft? Can you get your money back? And I don't think those questions have been answered yet. And if you know anything about a university setting, universities are risk adverse, right? Because we're a state agency. Anything that we do could place not only UK at risk, but also the state as a whole. So, I think tech transfer offices are still trying to figure out how potentially to leverage NFTs how to leverage them to get commercial value out of them without running afoul of law that's woefully behind.
Yeah, I think that's obviously been growing over the years, as shown by the fact that at our national conference with Autumn, that they're doing sessions this year that are geared toward that. So I think it's going to be one of those things where it's going to continue to evolve over time.
It is, but there's always going to be this old guard that says they're junk and bogus, and then you're going to have a new generation that says, no, these are the greatest things, right? It's the same thing you have with cryptocurrency. You have traditional investors that say this is garbage, and anytime governments can say you can't use this as currency, China just came out and said no cryptocurrencies because it could affect the value of, their currency. So it's kind of at the whim of, so you have this old guard and you have the new guard that comes along and says, no, this is great, right? This is a, decentralized monetary system that should be used and is super secure using blockchains and whatnot. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where this all comes out.
We have a comment from one of our participants asking better investment, Air Jordans or NFTs. They said, just kidding.
I don't know. I'm not a sneakerhead, so my wife won't even let me get Nikes. She's a firm believer in uncomfortable shoes for everyone in the family.
That's awesome, Matt. Yeah, I think we'll probably continue to talk about NFTs for a while. How it'll evolve at the university level will be interesting to see if it moves that way. Can you talk a little bit about the resources that are available for people that want to commercialize their technology but don't really understand the business side, and how OTC has resources that can help them?
So as I mentioned, we have a whole commercialization team, right? I mean, one of the easiest things is to just get a hold of them, right? We have individual commercialization managers for specific technology areas, right? Not so traditional technology. So let me talk about this in two separate things. So we have OTC, it's traditional, whatever. And we have, an individual assigned to like traditional medical inventions. We have individuals assigned to medical devices. We have individual assigned to engineering and chemistry. We have an individual assigned to CAR and kind of that area, these applied engineering projects. And if you're interested in or from one of those areas, that would be great, and they would be able to help you out. On the other side, we are trying to, so, I've been talking about this idea of, dissemination of knowledge and getting, what our researchers have spent their time and effort on into the hands of the people that need it. So with that, we also have a new a new social innovation kind of prong we're going at under the more like UK Innovate umbrella. We have a great person hired in that position, Serenity Wright. And what we're trying to do is take these same ideas of traditional commercialization and trying to make money, moving more towards that sustainability and help and dissemination with not what people have traditionally not thought of as inventions, right? So more from social work side or public health or the arts, right? They have a lot of good ideas coming out, and they're looking for ways to get it into the hands of the people that need it, right? And that's one of our goals, because that's one of the things we really want to strive to do, which is why we've started this. And, talking to Serenity, if it's coming from one of those areas, would be great, because a lot of times it's not a, hey, we get it in, we have federal funding, we find a partner that wants to sell it, right? That may not be the path for these other things. It may be, hey, we get it in, you have some funding, great, but now maybe are there nonprofits looking to do the same thing that would be interested in sponsoring something or teaming up and going more that route to try to find avenues to get it out? And we can help with that. When you're further along in the process and you have disclosures and things like that, we have classes and Launch Blue and other things after you get to that point. But just from the onset, if you don't have something but you're looking at it more general, our people are always willing to sit down and talk to you, right? And that can include a conversation with just the commercialization people, or they bring me in to say, what are you looking at? What kind of protections can we have? and what makes the most sense for what you're looking to do, right? Because we have a lot of these paths and things that we know from over the years, but in reality, everything that walks into our door is different, right? It requires a unique solution to get it out. And I think that just goes back to the engagement, right? Be engaged with our office and we can help you out and let you know what programs we have available. And we have the experience and, finally have, the manpower to help out at that early stage.
That's great information, Matt. And you mentioned Launch Blue, and one of the things for people who have technology that they're in the process or have protected, and they're thinking about the potential of doing a UK startup, Launch Blue's UXL program is a great way to go through that program and learn about the business side and really decide if a startup is the best commercialization path for that technology.
Yeah.
So they do that program every spring and every fall. And it's really an immersive program. So I think if anyone's interested, you can always check out the launchblue.org site, or you can also connect to it from the UK Innovate side. But it's a great way to really learn the business side to see if that's really where you want to go if you're not sure.
Yeah, and I think with that, it's also people get a mindset that, no, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to do a startup, or they do, right? But that's not this is a sliding scale, right? It's not like you come in and you say, I want to do a startup and we're going to lock you into that. And that's where you are. Or you come in and say, well, I just want a license. I don't want to do anything. That may be not the best way to move forward, right? And as an example, you come in, you have a product, you say, I don't want to do anything, I want to license it, right? So we go out and talk to companies, and the company comes back and says, it's a great idea, but we need you to do X, Y, and Z. Well, how are you going to do X, Y, and Z, right? How are you going to overcome that hurdle? There may not be federal funding, just from a pure research standpoint, but if you form a startup, then you're availing yourself of SBIR funding, things like that. That may be the avenue, not with the idea that I'm going to start a whole new job and take this startup to market, right? And have my big IPO. Maybe that's not what you're interested in. Maybe you just started up to answer those questions and then off to the larger partner, right? So it doesn't mean if you go down the startup route, you're looking to take that startup all the way from a small one-person startup company to something large and massive. It may be just to overcome some de-risking hurdle that a larger company wants, and that's the exit on that. So don't think of it, and we can help you work through all of that process, right? We can let you know, to get your technology out, here's what these companies want, and here's what we think the best way to get there is. And we can help you through, all of those steps.
Matt, you talked about, you mentioned licenses. If a company wants to license IP that has come out of a researcher's lab and they want that researcher to be a consultant, how is that relationship managed?
Well, one thing would probably have to go through the conflicts process to make sure that there's nothing there. But typically consulting is outside of both the university and technically OTC, if it's a pure consultant, right? If you're looking at one of your inventions that goes out, that's all part of, hopefully if we have a licensee for it, they'll do something like an SRA. So you won't be so much a consultant as they'll be paying for further advancements on that technology. And that's kind of our job to try to help find that best avenue, right? Because when you consult and we have something licensed out, it's this weird relationship where you're doing something that benefits you, but also benefits the university that, there would probably have to be clearance from a conflict standpoint. But an SRA is more cut and dry, right? And that typically says if we already have a licensee, they're willing to pay money for you to do more research. So that money's coming into the lab. And then all of our SRA, our sponsored research agreements say, if you develop it in your lab, then it's UK's. And then it, you know, they may have a right to license that new technology, but it's covered, right? We're covered. Whereas if you do a standard consulting outside of that, now the question becomes, if you're consulting, are you doing it outside of the university setting? And then if you are, then anything you develop would belong to that company. I can guarantee you that in a consulting agreement or an employee agreement with the company, that is not nearly as lucrative as if you would have done it at the university, right? When I was in-house with that chemical company, you know, it was just an expectation that our scientists were going to develop new things. What did they get for developing maybe an entirely new product line? A pat on the back and a thanks, right? And that's it. Whereas if it's developed at UK, a portion of all income that comes in once expenses are paid goes out to our innovators in whatever field. It doesn't change. So 40% of any of the money that comes into the university goes directly back out and is split between all the individuals that were responsible for bringing that forth.
Thanks, Matt. And I would mention too, we had a wonderful presentation at our OTC staff meeting earlier this week with Emily Bradford, who is the conflict of interest administrator. And that's one of the best places to start, probably the first place you should start if consulting has come across, so that she can really direct you and make sure that all of those guidelines and procedures are done properly. I have another question, Matt. You talked about trademarks. So has OTC protected any trademark? Example would be if a researcher makes a medical device and wants to publish it with a particular name, would we protect the name?
So we have protected, I think, 6 trademarks, 6. And the answer to your second question is typically no. And here's the reason. I mentioned this before. The university is not in the business of selling products, right? So the requirements, and I may have hit trademarks quick, but didn't talk about them in the traditional sense of here's the IP we can do at our office. So a trademark has certain requirements. One is that the product that is going to be sold across state lines, right? So if, for one, you cannot even get a trademark, you're not even eligible unless you intend to have a product and sell it across state lines. You can file as an intent to use, but now you have a limited time in order to prove that you are selling across state lines. What UK is not going to do is sell your product across state lines, so we can't really help. However, we can provide assistance with, you know, in that instance, if you have a startup that wants to name it a certain thing and sell it, we can assist with trademark searching to let you know name availability and kind of talk you through the process. But at the end of the day, the company would have to get its own trademark. Now, I did mention that UK has filed a number of trademarks. One is, I can talk about this because now it's public to some degree. I can't get into a lot of details, but one department here at UK is looking to do a certification, right? If you know, people are familiar with like Energy Star, where you have household appliances that run at a certain level of energy efficiency. They can apply and get this certification mark to show the public, yes, we meet the standards set by this, you know, organization for energy efficiency. And that's kind of what we're going to do through one of, you know, our departments here at the university. And those are the marks we've applied for. So it's not so much a product as much as it is we're developing a standard that we would like an industry to follow. And hopefully they get on board, and we could take advantage of being that first out there and get this industry to buy in and put that mark on their products. So in that case, we're not selling a thing, we're selling a certification, which is a bit different. But if you have something similar, those would be ones we would entertain.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate all the wonderful answers to the questions, very helpful. We are going to move to end this session. We thank all of you for attending. If you have questions later, something comes up, please feel free to email otcinfo@uky.edu, and I will get the information to the correct person so that you can get answers. We have our next webinar next month. That is talking about the restructuring that OTC has done and how we hope this restructuring will better help our faculty innovators. And then in April, we will have a webinar on commercialization, so you can meet the commercialization team that Matt talked about and learn all about what they do and how they can help you. Thank you again for attending. We have recorded this and we will be posting on YouTube, and we'll send out the link. Thank you all. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.